Hello, everyone. How are you? What a thrilling opportunity we all have to spend some time with Nadia. We'll just give it a couple of more minutes and then we'll get started. So, welcome to today's Medley Moments. I am very, very excited and so grateful to have an opportunity to have a conversation with Nadia Boujarwah. Nadia is the founder of Dia and Co. and will share so much with us about her journey towards founding Dia, the driving principle for the creation of the company, and what it's really like to build a business in a category that really, quite frankly, needs to evolve. So, let me introduce Nadia by sharing a little bit about her background, her experiences. She started out in investment banking, did a stint in fashion, and while at Harvard Business School, curated with a co-founder the idea for Dia and Co. I often get the question, can you bring your true self to work? And in life, and how do you represent your true self? Well, the thing that struck me about Nadia as I've gotten to know her over the years is that her identity is part and central to her creation of Dia and Co. In fact, Dia and Co describes its mission as driven by the fact that style isn't a set of rules; it's a way to celebrate who you are. And Nadia, I so appreciate your honesty, your authenticity about what it's like to really love fashion, but also to have recognized that for someone who has varied from a size 12 to a 22, the choices have been limited. And you've owned it. You've created Dia & Co. to really reestablish the category from a simply plus size brand to one that's really inclusive fashion. So that's how I would describe you and your experiences. As always with Medley Moments, tell us your story as you want people to hear it and to know it.
Well, thank you, Edith. And I think that is, a great introduction and a great overview of my story and of who I am. This is very much a labor of love and a very personal journey. In founding Dia, I actually think that one of the things that is the most extraordinary, and we're going on almost 10 years of building this business. So it's
10 years. That's an important point. Startups are not startup overnight. I think that's a good sentence, but anyway.
But it really is, kind of reflecting on this, which has obviously been the bulk of my career at this point. Dia is a very unique activity for me because it is incredibly personal. This really did start from recognizing that, I wanted to be a fashionable investment banker and there just weren't clothes for me to wear in my size, even though, I really wanted to spend the money. But also because it's just like, I think the plus size industry is one that is truly exceptional, I think, in its complexity, and the difficulties of serving this customer and, really how the industry operates. And the combination of having an intellectual puzzle that has kept us on our toes for 10 years and the personal journey and mission of the brand, I think I'm very grateful every day to be able to work on something at the intersection of those two things. So
and take us back to the idea generation. Clearly it came from your need, and your need was not being met. Access to fashion choices that really represented who you are in the context of work and in the context of life. But going from idea to actually trying to build something, how does that happen?
I think we took an approach that I would recommend, which is really starting from a problem that a customer has, in this case, ourselves, and thinking really about building solutions for that problem. In every situation, you can there's often solutions that you have that you're looking for a problem to apply to. And I think that that's a different entrepreneurial journey. I think the entrepreneurial journey of really starting from a customer pain point and trying to work backwards is one that has really guided everything we've done at D. And our business has evolved over the course of the last 10 years in every possible way, from a direct-to-consumer brand to a clothing manufacturer to a marketplace. We've really done everything. And, the calculus has always been reverse engineering from what our customer needs most. And we don't operate in a vacuum. The industry has also changed as we've been building. And so really continuing to refine the role that we play in the market to make sure that we can be delivering on our promise to her in each, phase of the business has been really important. So it started with really helping our customers get access to what we thought was actually pretty decent supply in the market. As our business grew, it turned out that the supply wasn't really that deep. And so we started building brands in the space and actually went into clothing manufacturing for a period of time, which was actually pretty successful. But in the last 5 or 7 years, the really remarkable thing is that the industry has really caught up. And the truth is that if you speak to most brands, designers, retailers today, they have today or are thinking about some kind of an inclusive fashion strategy. And so our role has really evolved much more into kind of the market maker, so to speak, of really combining brands that have really committed to the space with the customer and community that we've built over the course of the last 10 years in a marketplace format, which fortunately I think is the best incarnation of our business yet. A lot easier than running clothing manufacturing, in the last 3 years of supply chains where they've been. So it's been a wild evolution, but at the core of it has always been the question of what does she actually need from us most? And we do think of ourselves as the most avid problem solvers on her behalf. And so instead of just doing what other people are doing in the moment, really thinking about what's the thing that needs to be solved the most in this customer, and that customer really be the through line, and what's been stable about our business for 10 years is really how we've approached it. And so far, so good.
So you drive your thinking and the evolution of your business for what she needs and wants, your customers. Has there been any tension between what your insights are telling you about what she wants and what your investors think would be best, and how have you managed that over time? I think for many that are listening who are curious about the journey of creating a company, getting started and getting people to believe and invest is an important milestone. How do you balance those two things?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're very lucky in that we have really wonderful investors. I think thinking back on all the ups and downs that we've had at Dia, one of my takeaways is that if you have really great investors in a big market that you're going after, you have a lot of time to figure things out. And, I would say that we're in that category. I think that there's always an art to really thinking about the feedback that you're getting from customers and exactly how to incorporate that into your business. One example of feedback that we got and we used to take very literally was feedback around cost and pricing, for example. And in some ways, you always want to be able to deliver at the lowest possible price for customers.
Mm-hmm.
But the value that we can deliver to customers is really much more of a portfolio of value. And so really kind of thinking about all the different ways that we can help create that value, not just on price, which is, I think, what you'll hear very loudly from customers very often, I think has guided how we, work with that piece of feedback in particular. But, I think it's really thinking at what the customer is getting at, not just literally what they're asking for, I think has been a good learning for us.
And I appreciate you sharing that. I do think that when you're launching a company and you're looking for capital, you could put getting capital as the primary goal, and it certainly is critically important. But you've highlighted the significance of having people invest who are real partners,
Mm-hmm.
who are willing to invest the time, share their expertise, and be with you on the journey, because they will be with you on the journey. Instantaneous success is not the norm. And so I think that's super important and really interesting. Can we shift a little bit from talking about Dia and Co. and the customer and talk about you, Nadia? What surprised you and excited you that you didn't expect about being a founder of Dia and Co. And what didn't you expect, particularly with respect to some of the challenges?
Yeah. I mean, I think like a lot of difficult things in life, being a founder, starting an entrepreneurial journey is one of these things where intellectually at the beginning that it's going to be very hard, but you don't really know what hard feels like until you're in it and you're like, oh, wow. Like, it's one thing to think that it's going to be hard. It's another thing to feel the hard.
Feel the hard. Yeah.
As you're going through it. And I can say, without without any hesitation that building Dia has been the absolute hardest, most growth inducing experience that I've ever had in my life. The realities of starting from scratch and building a business, of any scale with any size team and with any customer base is an exceptionally difficult one. I think, we chose to go down the path of raising venture capital, which came with a speed and a scale of growth and ambition that was, very distinct. And we were first time founders. I mean, I founded Dia when I was 27 years old. I had no idea what I was doing. I, had been building models in Excel prior to that, certainly not managing teams or boards or anything else that quickly became a part of my daily job. And, I think that it teaches you a lot about yourself to go through very challenging experiences, especially prolonged ones. I think, a couple years at a time, you can do anything, but thinking back on the journey now, it really, I think, makes it clear what's important. I've learned a lot. I value the partnerships that we have inside and outside of Dia, immeasurably. I'm exceptionally lucky in that I have a co-founder who has been a true partner from the very beginning and has weathered every storm. And certainly the same for our investors and board. So, I think we're very lucky, but I think to say that starting a company is anything other than really an irrational choice, I think would be untrue.
Yeah, I have to share that Nadia has become part of our medley. Jordan Taylor and I, my co-founder, are also first-time entrepreneurs. I've worked for a few years doing other things, but it is distinctly different and unique to found a company in a category that doesn't really exist, where the interest is really driven by a deep passion and instinct that people really need to connect with other human beings to learn and grow and to flourish across personal and professional priorities. That's what Medley is about. But one of the things that I've been really struck by was an opportunity to honestly learn from people like Nadia about her journey. She's 10 years into it. We're 4. Conversations with you have really been helpful to us as we think about how to position ourselves for growth, balanced growth in the context of what the market is interested in and where we think we add value. And so just want to thank you for extending yourself. And I think that's an important message to everyone, that one of the things that Nadia has said is that, sometimes it can be isolating, right? I too have benefited from having an extraordinary co-founder, but if we just talk to each other, we're limiting ourselves in our perspective. And so sharing that, I think, is super important, Nadia, and thanks for being so open about it. One of the things that we think about often is how to think about the growth of Medley and creating this experience for our members and balancing that with our personal priorities.
Mm-hmm.
How have you done that? Because it can be all consuming. Yeah, share a little bit about that with our viewers and participants.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is definitely all consuming. We've talked about this a little bit before, but the reality, I think one of the things that I didn't realize at the beginning of my journey was how much of a lifestyle choice I was making in becoming a founder. It is a type of commitment and a level of responsibility that is unlike, I think, most other jobs, certainly in a corporate context. And, I think that can really take a toll, because the reality is over the last 10 years at Dia, life has also happened,
Yes.
and really finding balance and, really important critical life moments, like my mother becoming very ill and caring for her, and ultimately her passing away, and thinking about how to manage, going back to being an authentic leader. I think that there's a huge amount of my story in terms of my own body image and style and fashion. That's a big part of the story. But in a moment like that, for example, I think really sharing with the team how hard that was for me. And, just like the reality of not being able to find the right balance. They're needing to choose to spend time in a very specific way. I think are the types of moments that you don't really hear about. And I was actually reflecting on this recently. The reality of going through a very difficult life moment like that is that if I were in any other job, I would have just taken time off. And I would have, kind of focused in a more linear way on what was most important. And the unique challenge of being a founder is that you really can't do that. When you have hundreds of employees and investors and other people really depending on you, it's the level of accountability and responsibility, I think, far surpasses what might be expected of you in a different type of role. And I think that just really forces this negotiation with your personal priorities and making sure that you can look back on your life and say, I spent time where I needed to spend time, and really kind of think back on that without regret, which is, I think, probably one of the hardest things, because time only passes and only moves forward, doesn't wait for any of us. And really just thinking in every moment, like, how do I make sure that my time is being spent in the way that it's critical for me to be able to look back on and know that I made those choices while managing, the reality of the responsibilities that we take on when we hire people, we take capital from investors, we make promises to customers, and that balancing act really never gets easier.
Yeah, I will support that. That it doesn't get easier; it gets more complicated. But I really admire, Nadia, one, how you've shared that struggle, because as a leader, I think your point was super important, that you and we need to show that we too struggle with those choices, and there isn't just one right path. And what you can do is, and what you did do, was to be intentional around your thinking and how you spent your time, and how you, when you were focused on Dia, you showed up. But I know that you were there for your mom and your family in a way that was meaningful to you and to your mom. And so, thank you so much for that authentic, real look at life, because that is real, and that is life. So, tell us about the future. Like, where do you want to be in 5 years with respect to Dia in the context of your life? Do you start with a North Star and do you work towards that? And when you need to change paths, how do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like we're kind of in like a new and energized moment at Dia coming out of COVID, which has been very needed and exhilarating. We are a thriving marketplace today, which has been a whole new kind of business model to learn and improve on and scale, which has been, again, really kind of like kept us very intellectually engaged. And, I think, for better or for worse, we chose a very large problem. And so that means that we have.
Can you give us a sense of the size of the problem and the opportunity?
Oh, yes, of course. The plus size market is one of the wackiest markets that exists, right? Like, I went to Harvard Business School. I fundamentally believe that large opportunities don't remain untapped forever. And yet this is one that does. And 10 years into it, I can tell you that it is a large opportunity and it's untapped. We estimate that there are about 100 million adult women in the US that wear plus sizes. So we serve women's sizes 10 to 32. And the vast minority of retail serves those sizes. So, this is all based on public math, us putting it together. Plus size women spend about 20 cents on the dollar what women in smaller sizes. If you think about that spending gap in the context of 100 million women opportunity, there really is no kind of area of retail or of commerce that could compete with the size of what that market could look like if it came to its full potential. And so that's what we do all day, figure out how do we get our customers to not be spending 20 cents on the dollar. Foundational to who we are as a business is the idea that.
Nadia, can you talk about that just for a second? What do you mean by spending 20 cents on the dollar?
So if you take the total amount of dollars that are spent in apparel and the sizes that we cater to,
Mm-hmm.
divided by the number of women who are in that category,
Ah,
and compare it to the total number of dollars that are spent below a size 10, divided by the number of women in that category, for every dollar that a woman spends, for example, in a size 8, a plus size woman on average is spending 20 cents.
big opportunity.
Huge opportunity. And you look at an opportunity like that, and the first question is there a supply problem or is there a demand problem? And I think that the industry for a long time has said that there's a demand problem, that there's something on the side of the demand that just fundamentally operates differently. We adamantly disagree because we are the demand side. I know that I would spend more if I had more options, and I know that most women don't fundamentally change when they become a different size in terms of the core desire to be able to look good and feel good and dress the
Hmm.
part of the life that you want to live. And so we've always believed that it's a supply problem. And so, we've been kind of tinkering and iterating on the supply side to figure out exactly what needs to happen to close that gap. But I mean, the opportunity is enormous. There are more plus size women in the US than there are plus size women in China. That's how large the US opportunity is. It's truly an extraordinary and unique market, and it's hard. It's an opportunity that large doesn't stay unresolved for easy reasons. If it was easy, it would have been solved a long time ago. And so we keep working.
And so now you're in a space where you see the opportunity, you're going after it, you're an early um, uh, uh, a driver, not a participant, a driver of reframing the conversation from plus size to inclusive fashion. And I think that's super important and really powerful. We hear people talk about inclusivity all the time, and we believe it's really in the context of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the work environment, super, super critical. But you talk about how inclusivity is super, super important here. Why is that? Why have you really owned and pushed the conversation about the importance of inclusivity in the context of Dia and Co?
I think that there are many, unfortunately, but the reality is that we live in a world where there are many biases and kind of many prejudices that we have as a society. That's just real life. We operate in a corner of the world focused on weight bias, which is actually one of the most pervasive and least spoken about forms of bias that exists. This is bias that's well documented in medical contexts and employment contexts and educational contexts, and certainly in private personal life contexts. Um, and it's real, and it affects the vast majority of women. And so, as a what we serve as the fashion industry, right? We sell clothes, and I believe that as an apparel industry, one of the most important dimensions of inclusivity for us to care about is size-based inclusivity, because at the end of the day, we're making clothes for people to put on their bodies. And so,
Mm.
kind of driving forward the conversation around size inclusivity and driving awareness around weight bias has been core to what we do. And honestly, I think there just needs to be more time spent on that, because every dimension of inclusivity is important. This is just one that tends to get much less understanding and attention, even though if you take a moment to think about it, the pervasiveness of weight bias is truly, truly extraordinary.
How has it impacted you, Nadia?
It's impacted me in so many ways. It's so interesting to me to think back on the fact that of all the relationships in my life that have changed through Dia, my relationship with my body is probably the one that's changed the most. And I used to be very embarrassed of the stories of not being able to find, the clothes that I wanted, or talking about my size or my weight, or all these things were things that were very that were really encapsulated in shame in the way that I had lived my life for the 27 years before Dia, and really reframing that relationship with myself as part of building this brand and building this business has been extraordinary, right? Like I live in a completely different place inside my body today than I did 10 years ago. And hopefully being able to be a part of a journey like that for more of our customers is, I think, the greatest thing that we can be doing.
Nadia, you've shared so many really important things with us. Getting inside yourself, a different relationship with self, um, understanding how important it is for you to be intentional about how you appear and represent in the creation of Dia, in the relationship that you have with your colleagues as a leader, in your life and your relationships. I found this conversation to be inspiring. I think we are often all in moments where we take that moment to say, what's most important here? Self or the, getting on to get on. And I think that it's super exciting. I'm sure when someone asks you, can you be your true self at work? That work is your true self. And it was an important learning that I've had over the course of the last decades, pushed often by the voices of those that want to be heard, the experiences that people want to share. And I think it's really wonderful and important and exciting that you are doing it for those who really want to experience inclusive fashion. So thank you so much for joining us. Medley is about creating connections and inclusive conversations. And I'm just super fortunate to have had the opportunity to know and work and learn from you as a founder and as a human. So thank you again, Nadia Boujarwah, founder of Dia and Co. And for everyone that's joined us live or listens to this after the fact, thank you for your time and your interest. And we look forward to our next Medley conversation and moment.
Thank you, Edith.